Kyle Blakely with Mark Waller, and this is another episode of We Have Issues. Today we have an extra special guest joining us. Our producer, Josh Hosler, is here with us for today's episode. So welcome to both of you. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Kyle. I'm looking forward to hearing what Josh has to say, even though he's a Marine and really can't read and write very well.
Still a Marine.
Well, we didn't.
I called you a Marine. I didn't say a former Marine. I said a Marine. See, you're not even listening already.
We didn't send him any notes, so he doesn't have to read.
I'm like trained here.
Which, by the way, I think we got to send apologies to our last guest, Rachel Beck. We had her on a computer in my office, and for some reason, the video didn't record. So we have her voice, we have everything that she said, but we didn't get to see her expressions and her lovely face as we were discussing these ishes.
So people
I know Mark hates
the smartest person in that room.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the other thing is actually, Josh, I apologize for the joke I made just a minute ago trying to pile on Mark's joke, because Josh is the one who edits this podcast. I'm really not interested in pissing him off.
That's right. We're going to have like fake mustaches. He's going to draw stuff on our forehead.
Fake mustache.
Exactly. Or it's just going to be Josh. He's just going to cut us out and it'll just be his parts.
No, I'll put Marjorie Taylor Greene's body on Mark and
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Nice. So Mark will go from 5 to 3 toes on each foot.
I thought it was 6.
No, I think she has sloth feet.
Cool.
Well,
can you edit that part out? Can you edit sloth feet out, Josh? Makes me a little nervous.
Okay, we'll edit that. Good. So today's episode, we're going to talk about all the interesting candidate races in Colorado.
Or lack of interesting candidate races, but go ahead.
Lack of the U.S. congressional races, and then some of the more competitive state house and state senate races, and what that means for Colorado, if it means anything at all. But before that, I did not watch the vice presidential debate last night because I just didn't have it in me to sit through it. So did you guys watch it?
I did. I watched it. I was the nerd of the group here.
No, I did too.
Oh, great. You want to talk about a non-event? Maybe I don't know. I don't think I'm biased here. It seems to me, for the most part, Vance kind of won that debate, but Walz had a couple of good answers, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't move the needle a bit. I mean, the presidential debate didn't really move the needle. Therefore, the vice presidential debate really isn't going to move it. I don't know. What do you think, Josh?
I think watching it, they were a lot more cordial and professional. And
I like seeing that.
Between the two of them. I am biased. I'm not a fan of Walz as an actual combat vet. I am extremely biased against him for lying about his service. Mark, as a veteran, that's one thing that really gets me. Like, your service is enough. Lying about it it's just wrong. So I am biased on that. The one thing I did notice body language wise, I'm big body language and certain things that you just don't do as a candidate. He mentioned that he's, not smart sometimes. I forget the exact term, but basically a buffoon. He's like, I'm a buffoon sometimes, or a nuthead or whatever it was. And I thought that was that was based on saying, answering or not answering the question about him being in China during the massacre in '89. And he beat around and said, what his program did. But
Wait, that wasn't him standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square? I thought it was.
as a child. It was a small child, right? And I think that was him and a small
I think it was
child,
like a
with
college
actual
student or
hair.
something.
Yes, yeah. So
I
he
thought it was
said it
Tim
was,
Walz.
yeah, and I understand, especially, I mean, Mark and Kyle and I know when you talk all the time on camera, you're going to have things slip. But he's repeated that. So his answer, he basically wouldn't answer it because of obvious reasons, because it's been found that he wasn't there during that time. And so that was interesting. But he kept on looking to his right to JD Vance and nodding his head in agreement with him. And I thought he was a little too in agreement with JD Vance, because he was like, that's an excellent point. I think, and he actually started uh, making the argument for some of JD Vance's statements, which I, in a debate, I don't think is the best thing. But I thought it was very cordial. I agree. It doesn't really move the needle. I have had 3 individual husbands, friends of mine, say that their wives despise Trump, but really like JD Vance. I think it's a Marine thing. I'm just saying. But
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
no, so they're actually voting for Trump because JD Vance. And I
It
thought that was very interesting because I like you said, I don't think debates really move the needle, especially at this point. I think even the undecided are biased one way or another in the back of their mind. They know where they're going to vote at this point. Unless something catastrophic, a black swan event, something that really moves the needle. But I was surprised that uh, those women were voting for Trump based on them liking JD Vance. It's a Marine
li-
thing, Mark. I'm sorry.
listen, if the Marines, as an Air Force guy, I feel qualified to say this. If the Marines are running the country, God help us.
An
It's
enlisted
going to be a
Marine. And I
problem.
made that statement to my friends because we were having lunch, and each one individually was like, and I'm glad my wife didn't watch the debate. I mean, luckily she's married to a Marine, but
Here,
an enlisted Marine, enlisted combat veteran Marine. Oh, God help us. It's my fantasy. I've dreamed about it ever since being a Marine, that an enlisted infantry Marine would be in the White House,
we're
because
gonna
it's
we're gonna
chaotic.
charge the Social Security hill. It'll be interesting. But
I mean,
so here you said something that's it actually kind of been, I defended the guy's record, like, hey, he served
yeah.
24 years, he served 24 years
No one
honorably.
could take
It
that away.
absolutely. But I mean, I think you're kind of hitting on something in that the guy is a, you know, he is an habitual exaggerator.
Yeah.
And that is kind of becoming a problem. And I think you got to be true to who you are and what you do. I talk about my service every once in a while. And actually, I feel guilty sometimes talking about myself as a combat veteran, because I was a lawyer in the green zone, right? I wasn't a young Marine out knocking down doors in Fallujah. So my experience in combat was vastly different than others. And it's, I almost sheepishly say I'm a combat veteran because, again, I was a lawyer in the green zone, right? I mean, we got
But
bombed
I
a
know
little
guys
bit,
that
but
have died and gotten
but
wounded
but
in
we weren't out
Baghdad in the
there
green zone.
knocking
So
down doors. And so I do think this is going to become a bit of a problem for Tim Walz.
if you were an Air Force
Credibility issue.
officer and you were bragging about being in NORAD and talking to agencies in Europe and bragging about it and how you got paper cuts and wanted 100% disability from the VA, and that was your thing, I'd hold it against you. But you're a man of honor. I value as a friend, and you've never done that. We know a lot of politicians, in Colorado alone, that it's like, I was an Air Force officer, or I was in an Army or whatever, and they brag about these war stories. And we as veterans are like, yeah, I mean, you could call a spade a spade. When somebody's, telling war stories and exaggerations, it just rubs me the wrong way. Being a combat vet, you deployed. Again, I mean, you were in the green zone. I know a lot of people that have gotten injured and killed in the green zone. And so that counts. And you've never said one way or another. You've never leaned on like I was the next Rambo or something. You never said you were a PJ. You stated it. It's honorable. You served your country honorably. But by lying and going from that, like I said,
Yeah,
it rubs me the wrong way. It's a pattern
exaggerating
of
it,
dishonor.
So actually, let me ask a question as a non-vet. Does that bother you more than Trump disparaging the troops and not having respect for the military? Or
No, that
does
bothers me
or
too.
that
I
I
mean,
was going
it
to say,
bothers me. I mean, so again, I'm biased. He said a few things that it's just like you just hit your head, and just like, what are you talking about? Those that, you know, we talk as veterans differently than somebody that hasn't served, and we earned that right. And we used to say a staff sergeant who had two Purple Hearts said that he told us the Purple Heart is a Forgot the Duck Award. Now a lot of people are like, that's insensitive, but this man was highly decorated and had two Purple Hearts, and so for him to say like we don't like those that got were POWs, we don't like the ones. I mean, it's annoying. It's like just stupid. But I think the biggest thing is the pattern of lying from Walz is a concern. I mean, they're big things. I mean, it's extremely easy to find out, especially as a presidential candidate or a governor, about your record in the service. And one of the things I also is telling for a veteran enlisted guy, um, we disparage crappy chain of command and commanders. I mean, if you're we call them bag of dicks or like, just waste of space. We had those guys. But for Walz's chain of command, his officers that he served under, to be like he was a coward, he was a waste of space, he shouldn't be vice president, and he's not that material, like in a very professional manner, is very telling. And for the sergeant major, the command sergeant major that replaced him, is extremely opinionated against Walz too. So for me, that's more telling that the men he was around who knew him intimately, that trained with him, have nothing good to say. Like there's no one that he served with that I've seen that actually has come forward and defended him. It's top down. It's the guys that served under him. It's the guys that he served under, just have no respect for him. And that is the biggest thing. Even
Yeah.
over his line about his war record, the fact that the men that were supposed to have his back, listen to his orders, and receive orders don't have his back, that's damning.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Kyle, no, it irritates shit out of me when Donald Trump besmirches John McCain, and calls him a loser because he got caught. Well, I mean, here's the deal. The guy's flying freaking dangerous sorties over Vietnam and his airplane gets shot down because he's trying to fly, low into a combat zone and drop his bombs in the place that he needs to drop them. It's bullshit to call him out for that. So I don't have a lot of respect for that either. But I mean, we're left with what we're left with in this race, and it's unfortunate.
well, and like you said, I tend to agree. So what I read this morning after the debate, I could actually make myself do that. There was one poll that said Walz's favorables went up by like 13% or whatever to 61%, and JD's favorables went up 22% to 47% or something. So both of them came out of it apparently looking better than when they went in, but I don't think in the end I agree. I don't think it matters. I don't think people are making,
And I
maybe
think,
there's maybe the three wives here in El Paso County,
yeah,
but I don't know that there's a lot of people making the decision based on who the vice president's going to be.
that's right. And the favorables went up because they were nice to each other.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there was a judge's decision this week in the Colorado Republican Party leadership saga that we've talked about periodically and had Eli Bremer on. And the judge threw out the meeting that Eli got elected to be the head of the state Republican Party, said it wasn't done properly, and Dave Williams is still in charge.
Yeah, what the judge said was 3/5 of the people weren't there to vote, therefore the vote is invalidated. The judge says it's 3/5 of the entire Central Committee And Eli's argument was, no, it's 3/5 of the people that show up. And so, and this is, I think, a circumstance where this judge was looking for any reason to frickin' punt this thing down the road because they don't like to get mixed up in party squabbles. So, what's interesting to me in this, and I'd love to hear what Josh has to say about it. What's interesting to me in all of this is, Dave is kind of doing a victory lap on this, like he's kind of won something. And I'm thinking to myself, pal, the fact that you've been challenged and challenged to the degree that 150 people showed up at a meeting to vote against you should be ringing the alarm bells for you. Like, you shouldn't have to win in court to keep your job. You should keep your job because you're doing a good job. It's ludicrous to me that this guy is, and now he's talking about purging the party of anybody that worked against him. And oh my God, it's a disaster.
He's just going to get voted out in the spring.
Unless he stacks the Central Committee.
Which he did last time.
Interesting.
So my bestie, Chairman Dave Williams, texted me. I shared it with Mark when he did. And he said that it was a bummer or whatnot and sent me the ruling. And for me, Dave Williams has always been extremely selfish and short-sighted. It's extremely knee-jerk reaction, not thinking about burning bridges or long game. And I told him, I was like, you need to understand, you might be excited about this and think it's a victory, but the longer the spotlight's on you, the longer you have the microphone, the worse it is for him. And he doesn't see that because he's failed and he's eroded his base that he brought with him. The hyper right extremists that, they've accused chairs, state chairs, county chairs, including myself, of all kinds of things, or, warned us not to do that we would never do anyway because it was unethical and we have character. Imagine that. And so he has taken that, and these same people that accused us of stuff don't care because they think this man's, sent by God to do their will, and it doesn't matter about ethics or laws or the bylaws. And in that mentality and his corruption on spending money and paying him his company that is a chairman consulting company as he's the chair, those things have eroded his following. So why would I want a snake to slither away and disappear to come out again? Like, let him have this. It's October, which I can't believe already that it's October. It's 30 days out basically from the election night on November 5th. All he can do is waste more money, and we really can't do anything. I mean, this isn't a victory lap. The more people that could see who he is and have that, soapbox that he could stand up and just spew hate and go after Republicans. I mean, he's never, Mark, have you ever seen him once as chair go after a Democrat? It's always beating the soapbox, trying to shill, for his candidates and attack those and remove those that stand up against them in the Republican Party. I've never seen it before. Yeah. I've never seen it, and his followers are adamant that he's doing the right thing because ends justify the means. So let him have it. He'll hopefully get removed. He was not going to be state chair until a week before when Vicky Tompkins was wrongly put in by Gregory Carlson and whatnot. He hammed up the El Paso Central Committee reorg meeting. She stacked her people in there, and then he realized the numbers, which El Paso, as Mark knows, if you have the El Paso Central Committee stacked in your favor, you have a large percentage, it blows every other county away by a large margin. So we'll see what happens. I think Mark and I have talked, Kyle and I have talked about how the party has eroded because of the corruption of Dave Williams and Vicky Tompkins, which are the Republican center base of the party. And, if ranked choice moves forward, that erodes it. We need to get rid of the caucus and assembly. And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it has been taken over by far right extremists that ends justify the means. They don't want to build a larger tent. They don't want to bring in people. They don't care about ethics, laws, bylaws. And the sooner we can get rid of the caucus and assembly, which like 0.01% of the Colorado Republicans are part of the decision makers at the caucus and assembly, we need to break it apart. I mean, that's the problem.
Josh, one of the things I always like to say about some of those people that are in that camp of the party, I don't even want to call them the far right, but the extreme side of the Republican Party. They always believe it's okay to lie, cheat, and steal, as long as you do it in the name of God. God told me to do this, so therefore the ends justify the means.
Mark, how many candidates have you met that said, God told me to run for office?
All of them.
And win.
No, that happens all the time, which I always love saying to them, well, God told me to run too.
Yeah.
Right? Or God told your opponent to run. Kyle, is God telling you to run for anything?
No. He said he doesn't give a shit who runs. He said he's got bigger things to worry about than who's running for fucking office.
Most of the people that say
District
that
5,
lose.
whatever.
And that's the thing is I think God is used as a crutch too much by these people. And
of course,
think, they drink the Kool-Aid and they think they're all that. And they're normally 9 times out of 10 the ones that lose.
Well, we had a state senator or state representative 20 years ago or so, I can't remember his name, who said God told him to get out, to not run again.
Now that's the one to believe that God's actually talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, we're not being blasphemous here. Hey, God tells people to do all sorts of stuff. It's just when God tells you to do self-interested stuff, we tend to question that.
Or when 3 of the 4 candidates said God told me to run, it's like, obviously, and not only run, but run and win, and I'm going to be a congressman, or I'm going to be president, or something that, could it be possible? Possibly, but not 3 out of the 4. God did not tell 3 out of the 4 they were going to win the race. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I don't know if Putin's in charge of the information campaign from God, he might have told 3 out of the 4.
That's right.
Win, just to fuck with them. Okay. One more thing before we jump into the Colorado races. Josh said the magic words a little bit ago, election night. So we've been teasing our big announcement for a couple of weeks, but today we are happy to announce that we are going to be doing a live episode on election night in partnership with the Gazette here in Colorado Springs, the newspaper, and we'll be broadcasting live from the newsroom.
I can't tell you how excited I am about this. Josh, where can people listen to us? How can they get this great content?
So we're
live on election night, one-stop shopping.
6 p.m. We're gonna go live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. We're coordinating with the Gazette also for their channels on their website and Reddit. But we're rolling out a group, live stream group for election night too. So check us out on Facebook and join that event. We'll be making announcements of guests and sponsorships and everything like that. It's going to be fun, easy access, which I know Kyle loves, and we'll be able to have those it's going to be one-stop shop. You don't have to go down a website and check out like different tabs. It's just going to be a one-tap option, and we're off to the races. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have great guests. It's going to be entertaining, if anything, and a lot better than some of those other options. So,
I can't wait to hear Liberal Lois talking about when some of her ballot initiatives are going down. That'll be fun to discuss.
Yeah,
with her.
I think it's going to be great. We'll have some of the leadership and reporters from the Gazette on, be some of the reporters who are covering some of the statewide races. We'll be able to talk to them about what they're seeing. Hopefully, maybe even be able to talk to some of the candidates, be able to kind of tap into them a little bit as the evening goes on. But it should be a lot of fun and pretty informative. And again, we will be talking about the federal races, but we'll have an extra emphasis on what's going on in Colorado for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, I think, from a federal perspective. Obviously, the presidential election is going to be a big deal. But the makeup of the House and the Senate are also going to be in the balance, right? I mean, everybody seems to think right now looks like it's a good map for Republicans in the Senate and probably take that back. But alternatively, it looks like the Democrats are going to have a better opportunity to take the House of Representatives back. So it'll be fun to follow.
Yeah, which is an excellent segue into this week's main topics of the fun and interesting races in Colorado. So let's go ahead and start with Congress. Mark, what do you think are going to be the most competitive races in Colorado that could have an impact on that national, who has the majority at the federal level?
Yeah. So first of all, as all of our listeners know, because they're really smart and they probably didn't serve in the Marines, they know that we have 8 congressional seats in the state of Colorado. We used to have 7, but we had 2 added. So those come up every election cycle, right? Representatives run every 2 years. Senators run every 6 years. Just so happens this is an off year for Senate elections in Colorado. We don't have a U.S. Senate race at the top of the ticket. So nor do we have governor or any of the other statewide offices at the top of the ticket. So really, in Colorado, really top of the ticket's going to be these congressional races. That's going to be it. And out of the 8, only 2 of them are even competitive. You know, we're going to get a new congressman here in CD5 in El Paso County. That's going to be Jeff Crank. I mean, that's going to happen. Other races throughout Brittany Patterson going to maintain her seat. Of course, Lauren Boebert's going to win in her new seat, CD4.
Yep. Diana DeGette for her last race.
That would have been more competitive. So it comes down to those 2 races. CD3, which is Lauren Boebert's old seat. Jeff Hurd and Adam Frisch. We had Frisch on, which, by the way, if he wins this election and Hurd loses, it's because Hurd did not come on the podcast, right? We are 100%. That influential in the state of Colorado that you're a candidate, we call you, you should be on our effing podcast.
Yep, those dozens of listeners made the difference.
If you've gotten this far, like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on X and Facebook. It really helps us out a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see. I'd been hearing in that race, everybody kind of expects Hurd to win that thing, and I think that's kind of what it's looking like. But latest polling has Frisch closing the gap there, and a lot of folks think that he really might have a chance.
Nice. I didn't see any of the polling numbers, but one of the sites I was looking at, a website, The Hill, where they mostly do give candidates a percentage chance of winning, they still had Hurd at 77% chance of winning. So it'll be interesting to see if that number starts to drop, if the polling's starting to narrow. And I think there's the last debate, or at least another debate down in Pueblo here coming up in the next few days in that race. So that will be interesting to see if he's closing the gap. He's got enough damn money to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looked like he raised about 15 million, but here's where it's here's where the polling data will start to sway that race if it's going to happen. And that's if he's really closing that gap and the Democrats think that they can win that, they'll put they'll divert resources to put a bunch of third-party money into that race if they think they can win it.
Yep. Good point. The other one then is CD8. Yadira Carveo, the incumbent, versus Gabe Evans. And again, a lot of times you hear people talk about districts, whether it's an R plus something or a D plus something or whatever. So for example, CD3 is an R plus 7 district, meaning Republicans have a 7-point advantage in registered voters in that district. And the CD8 is shown as even. So obviously expected to be more competitive. What are you seeing in that one?
Yeah, and I think Carveo's new. This is her, just finishing up her first term, and I think by all accounts she really hadn't done anything to light the world on fire. And she's viewed, I think, as a little bit more of a progressive member of Congress, which is hard to be in a competitive district, right? It'd be one thing if she lived in downtown Denver. It's a whole nother thing that she's, in part of a district that's made up by Weld County. So I think there are a lot of resources that are going to end up going into that one. I think it's incredibly competitive. And I think, Gabe Evans has been a really good candidate and has done his work. But I think at the end of the day, that one's probably going to be a hard one to pick off for Republicans. But if they do, that kind of may change the way the map looks across the country for the rest of the night. I mean, if Gabe Evans wins there, Republicans are probably going to have a pretty good night across America.
I think one of the interesting things, I'm looking at the numbers from the primary, and granted, she was, Carveo was the only candidate for the Democratic Party, and she got 35,409 votes in the primary. Gabe Evans had Janik Yoshi, who was he's a special one. We know him well from El Paso Times.
Former Dr. Janik Joshi.
Yeah, well, former doctor. Yeah, stops killing
and
people.
Perennial candidate.
Yes, and so I thought he was gone.
State party endorsed candidate too.
Well, of course. And so, so Gabe Evans got 35,393 votes, so 16 less than Carveo in the primary. Janik Joshi pulled a little more than 10,000. So, I mean, it's granted it's the primary, but the numbers are there for Evans if he can clean up Janik Joshi. I mean, he almost equaled the votes in the primary with Carveo, who's obviously the incumbent. So it should be interesting that if we pull off an upset in that one, that'd be huge.
Well, and this will be that case. To be clear, everybody complains about unaffiliateds voting in primaries, but if Republicans are able to win the day in that district, it's going to be because those unaffiliateds that voted in the primary also voted for Gabe Evans in the general election.
Yep.
Yeah, the polling I'm seeing right now, it's really interesting. The polling is, and this is from just over the last couple of days, late September, first couple of days of October, first day, 44% for each of them. So that means 12% still up in the air, either for a third party candidate or undecided. So still quite a bit of room there somewhere. But the Hill has her as an 85% chance of winning. So not quite matching up in terms of those two numbers. So you're right, it will be interesting. It is obviously competitive. So that could be a big one. I assume they're already, I haven't seen, but I assume they're already putting some significant third party money into that race.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the Hill, and I think they're projecting that Trump's got maybe a 65% chance to win the presidency back, but of course he's the presidential race is going to be on our ballot as well. I didn't mean to not talk about that one at all, but I think we all know that Colorado is a blue state that way, and it's really not going to be competitive for Trump to be able to win Colorado in any way. So I kind of look at that as kind of a non-issue for the Colorado ballot.
Yeah, she's up 11 points in Colorado in the last poll I saw. So
yeah,
makes sense.
Now I suppose if Trump can close that gap a little bit, maybe then that does bode well for Evans in the Carveo race and for Hurt in the Frisch race. But I wouldn't count on that.
Well, we
Yeah.
talked about Dave Williams' element, about him still being chair after the ruling. I really feel bad for the candidates, though, because the RNC has wrote off Colorado. The state party has raised zero money, and what little money that they were given by quote unquote what Dave Williams calls rhinos, like McCarthy gave, his PAC gave the state party hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he readily accepted that, and he's been living off that, hasn't raised other money. There's no resources or structure, which the party, if anything, should be there for, is supporting the candidates. So they're getting absolutely no support on that, and I really feel for the candidates because they're out there by themselves, and again, the RNC's written off Colorado not only because of the numbers, but because of the mess that Dave Williams has left the state party. And again, if you've watched, and obviously you've already subscribed to We Have Issues, we have a Patreon. If you enjoy this and want to support the show, we have a Patreon account. We Have Issues. Please click in the show descriptions. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh my God, we should have Josh on more often.
He covers all the things he asks us to cover that we never remember to.
That we stink at, yes. That's amazing. And he just does it so seamlessly and smoothly.
He does. We'll have to, that might become a permanent part of the show.
Just for CTAs, I
Josh
pop on.
break
Mark
in and go,
you can't
"Excuse
talk
me."
except CTAs, call to actions. Other than that, shut up.
Yeah, that's right. Don't say anything. Well, but I like how you just seamlessly put it in there, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
my
part of
job.
the analysis you're doing. It's clever. That's excellent work, man.
I try once in a while.
That's not just great work for a Marine. That's great work, period.
That's a compliment coming from you. That's the sweetest thing you've ever said, Mark.
That's right.
And just
Without a doubt.
remember, I stopped making Marine jokes after my first one. So when you're editing this,
my hypocrisy only goes so far, Kyle. It only goes so far. And part of my entrenched DNA is making fun of the other services. Do you know how many times I've been told I'm part of the chair force? Or, hey, if you want to take the Air Force out of a war environment, all you got to do is bomb air conditioning and PowerPoint, because everybody knows the Air Force can't be successful without air conditioning and PowerPoint. You know how many times I've heard those jokes? Come on.
So again, as a non-vet, my perception is the Air Force flies, the Navy floats, the Army runs, and the Marines sit around and call them all pussies.
Yes.
After we stacked bodies and did all the hard work, and then they show up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's the Air Force just bombs the shit out, does all the carpet bombing before the Marines go in and actually gets them there lots of times, drops them off.
My experience is they kill a bunch of sheep and then we have to get the Taliban, but that's another story.
Hey, oh my gosh, you can't hike across the ocean, pal.
Oh,
you can't hike across the ocean.
How funny. Okay, let's come down to Colorado for the state Senate and state house races. And again, kind of like on the national level, there's only a handful of these suckers that are going to be competitive. There's actually 13 of them where the candidates running, one of the candidates is running unopposed. So 13% of all of the seats in the Colorado House are going to be decided in an unopposed. So those are done. But of the rest, again, there's only a handful of competitive ones. Why don't we start with the Senate? Mark, what do you think are going to be the most competitive Senate races?
Well, and first, I would say this, gerrymandering in the state of Colorado, as we kind of draw those districts up, it makes most of them non-competitive, which has been a huge detriment to the people of the state of Colorado, because we end up with the extremes then from both sides, being the only options you have to vote for in the election. I actually think the jungle primary and ranked choice voting proposition that's on the ballot will hopefully be able to bring this back to the middle a little bit more. A lot of Republicans have given me grief for showing some support for this, but I'm like, geez, you know, we have fucked up so bad as Republicans in the state of Colorado. We can't do worse under this system.
Well, and again, and I think Rachel touched on this last week when we were talking about it. It might end up being a situation like Alaska. We go that direction for a few years, and now it's back on the ballot in Alaska to be repealed. Who knows? Maybe it'll knock some sense into the parties a little bit, and maybe we would get something a little better down the road. But I'm all for it for those exact reasons you mentioned.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's the extremes that have put it back on the ballot. You know, you have something when in the state of Colorado, as I've explained this to Republicans, it's not just the far right that opposes this. The far left opposes it as well.
Yep.
They don't, because they like being able to have control, and they know that they can control the current system, and maybe it you know, maybe this is something that interrupts their ability to do that as well as they've done. But in the, you know, in the state Senate, literally four races that people are focused on. That's it. 35 senators in the state of Colorado, 23 are Democrats, 12 are Republicans. Half of those are up this year. And only of half of the total 35 seats are up. And of those, four are competitive.
Yep.
I mean, how do you get the you know, the best choices then? And I would argue that two of the four that we're going to talk about are marginally competitive at best.
Interesting.
Like
Now,
one of them's lean Democrat, the other's lean Republican.
yeah. And one of the four, though, is the one that we covered a couple of weeks ago with both candidates, Mark Snyder and Stan Vanderwerf, right here in our backyard. Senate District 12 is actually competitive. But again, I don't know if anybody does polling on state Senate races. I don't have any information that I've seen that gives me a clue one way or another which way that race is going to go.
I can tell you, as I've talked to people that are running third-party efforts, and I don't want to give too much away here, you know, talking to some people that are a little bit more on the inside, but out of these four races, you know, that one's kind of, you know, maybe number 3 or 4 on the list. You know, and that's a pickup opportunity for Democrats, with Mark Snyder running against Stan Vanderwerf. It's an open seat, so Senator Bob Gardner is retiring, and that creates an opening for these two people to compete. You know, from what I've seen and from what I know, Republicans are working really hard to retain that seat. It's only a +2 our advantage. But from what I'm seeing, I think that's an uphill battle for Vanderwerf to climb. I'm a betting man. I think Snyder's going to win that race.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously Mark's been elected. He's been in the House. He's former mayor of Manitou Springs, well known in the area, and has a really solid reputation, especially like in the business community. And so I can understand why you're thinking that way.
Well, I think it comes down to two things: fundraising and fundraising. I think that Snyder, from a hard money perspective, money that he's going to raise for his campaign, is going to have a pretty significant advantage over Vanderwerf. So Snyder will raise a lot more money than Vanderwerf will. And Senate Democrats are going to have a lot more money to use in third-party efforts than Senate Republicans are. Yeah. And it's a focus for the Democrats. They want to win this seat.
Okay. What's another one that you're thinking about?
I
think the other one that's going to flip. So in my mind,
I weigh in on 12 real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things with 12, I was ended my chairmanship at El Paso County Republican Party in 19. And one of the things, we kept a look on the numbers and trends and everything like that. And the Republican Party in El Paso, which is the Republican bastion of Colorado and the largest number, obviously, Senate District 12 was a huge red flag because of demographic change and the influx. Because, I mean, it's one of my favorite places in Colorado, in El Paso, is, you know, the slope, and you have Cheyenne Mountain, you have the Broadmoor, and you have the Gods and Manitou. And it attracted a lot of, plants from California and the West Coast. And we were losing margin big time. And I don't think we've made any inroads. We haven't done ourselves any favors, because we had, a congressional member that didn't campaign, and we didn't. We've had a lot of just stagnation in our part, and took things for granted, and we've gotten lazy. And so between those things, that was a major problem, and that was, like, man, it doesn't seem like it, but 5 years ago. And how much that area has changed, it's going to be extremely difficult. I mean, we talked about commissioner races, the upcoming commissioner races, how that might flip to losing a seat to a Democrat. So it's going to be
First time in 50 years that would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the infighting within the party at both the state and the local level are going to make that much more difficult to be able to win that seat for Republicans as well.
Yes.
Yep. What's the other flip seat?
It's currently the Kevin Priola seat at Senate District 13. As many of our listeners and viewers may remember, Kevin Priola was a Republican, 16 years in the state legislature. And for that 16 years, 14 of those, he was a Republican. Very moderate Republican, because he had been in a district that had a Democrat registration advantage and ran as a moderate. And I think he got a lot of grief from a lot of folks in the Republican Party for calling him too moderate, calling him a rhino, and finally had enough. He had just had it, and he's like, fine, if I'm a rhino, I'll become a Democrat. At least maybe I can get something done in the Democratic Party. But in the last census and redraw, that district got more Republican. And so that should be a pickup opportunity for Republicans. Scott Bright running against Matt Johnston there. Scott Bright's the Republican. I think everything I'm hearing is Scott Bright should win that race. And so, you have now, one seat that flips to the Democrats, one seat flips back to the Republicans. We're still where we are.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. And so then what are the other two Senate races? Or were you saying there's 2 Senate and 2 House races?
No, there are 4 Senate seats, but these other 2 Senate seats are, one of them is a lean Republican already. So Cleve Simpson down in Senate District 6,
Yep.
down in like Alamosa, Southwest Colorado, encompasses all those counties down in Southwest Colorado, or most of the counties down in Southwest Colorado. That's a lean Republican seat, one that Republicans think, hey, we put some focus on it, we put our resources there, we're going to keep that seat.
Yep. Yeah.
But the Democrats think they have a good candidate there and think that maybe it is a pickup opportunity for them. But, betting man, gun to my head, I think Cleve Simpson, he's been a great state senator for that area and a great, he's represented his district very well. I think at the end of the day, he wins that one.
Yeah. In some of the information I was looking at, they were talking about which races have gotten the most outside money or recent inflections of outside money. And that was one of the Senate races that Republicans have pumped some money into, I think, to kind of hopefully, maintain that or bolster him a little bit. And Senate District 13 and Senate District 5 were the other two.
That should tell you, what the real big deal there is. That should tell you how they feel about Senate District 12.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Democrats have put third-party money into 12 to support Mark, and I think even some of it to attack Stan. But yeah, but it didn't look like the Republicans were kicking, at least what I saw, were kicking any third party or outside money into that to support Stan.
Yeah, and 5 would be another hold opportunity.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know which race is that, Josh. That I don't even have that one on my list.
Kohlberger.
And Mark Catlin.
Oh,
Yeah,
Catlin. Yeah, I think Catlin's going to win that.
yeah. Berger's the
But that's
Dem.
one that currently a Republican currently sits in that seat. That's Perry Will's
Yeah,
seat, of course, of course.
so that'll
That
hold.
one's on the list. But I think that's another Republican hold opportunity. But it shows you, they have very limited resources, especially compared to the Democrats. So, they got to be judicious about where they put those resources, which, that, I mean, I think that tells us, what we need to know when it comes to that Senate District 12 race.
Yeah, exactly.
It's maybe less of an opportunity to hold that seat than for Cleve Simpson and for Mark Catlin to win that open seat that's currently a Republican seat. The other one that I wanted to talk about, now I don't think this one would be competitive at all. It's Senate District 16. That's a definite lean Democrat seat, but I don't think that would be competitive at all. But I think the Republicans have, like by far, no, I don't mean to besmirch any of the other candidates that are running in any of the other seats, but by far, Robin Karnes, the Republican in that race, is the best new Republican candidate I've seen in this election cycle. And all of the hard work that she is doing is making that seat competitive. We wouldn't even be looking at it were it not for her being an outstanding candidate there.
Is this the
She's
first
on the
time she's ever run?
Centennial City Council right now
Oh,
and just,
okay.
working her tail off to get herself elected there. But that wouldn't be competitive at all were she not working so hard to win that seat.
Good. So let's move on to the House. How many House races do you think are going to be competitive? And really, what we're talking about in both instances is whether or not in the House the Dems hold on to a supermajority, or in the Senate if the Dems can pick up a supermajority. Really, that's what we're talking about here. But which races in the House do you think are going to be the most competitive?
Yeah, I'm good friends with Rose Puglisi, the House Minority Leader. And I feel for her. I've been there. I've been the leader before. It is hard to make the case to donors to, hey, put your precious resources here because we want to change the margin from 46 to 19 to, 45 to 18, right? I mean, it's just not necessarily a good use of resources. So it is incredibly difficult for her to be able to raise money necessary in order to flip a couple of seats there. I mean, it is just a massive uphill battle to climb. And when you sort of marry that up with a lot of the House Republican caucus, being kind of extreme people on the far right, they've just they've kind of become irrelevant. And it's I hate saying it, and it's terrible. And again, I think Rose is doing the absolute best she can, but Republicans literally have not had a net gain of a seat in the state house since 2012. 14 years.
Well,
Not a net gain of a seat at all.
yeah.
And it's 46 to 19. And so, maybe they have an opportunity to pick up a seat. I don't see it. I don't see that number changing. I mean, maybe Rebecca Kelty can beat Stephanie Vigil in House District 16, maybe. But I'm not holding my breath that anything's going to change in the House.
Well, I'm in that district, and I'm telling you, there's no activity whatsoever. Like, no walkers, no nothing. I haven't gotten one piece from either side.
That's interesting because, again, in the information I was looking at where outside money's coming in, both Republicans and Democrats are putting outside money into that race, which is really interesting if you're not seeing anything.
They're probably
Yeah,
targeting unaffiliated voters.
Yeah,
possible.
or they're giving all the money to Dave Williams. So, because we know then it doesn't go into the race. So,
That's the truth.
yeah, so I thought that was interesting. That was about the only one I saw where both parties were bringing outside money in. So I thought it would be maybe a little more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, and you think about it, that's across our entire ballot, and of course, most of these races aren't going to be on people's ballots. I mean, you have to be in the district, right, to have that race be on your ballot. But it just shows you there isn't a whole lot from a candidate perspective to get excited about in the state of Colorado in terms of the ballot this year.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, again, for depending on where you live, there'll be a little bit of excitement. Maybe some of the statewide ballot issues are, going to be exciting. Some of them just didn't seem all that interesting, but yeah. So kind of the bottom line is this is just kind of a nothing burger year for Colorado.
Not much is going to change in the state of Colorado as a result, impact of this election. I mean, I really think the single biggest issue we're going to be looking at and voting on is jungle primary ranked choice voting.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I think it might have the most money of anything.
Ironically, we may end up having one of like the longest ballots in history, but a lot of nothing.
Yeah, the most inconsequential.
Yeah. What do you think, Josh?
I what I look for is what's going to happen in 2 years, 4 years.
And here's what I'm curious about. Hang on, before you get too far down this road, I want to know how you're going to incorporate people liking and subscribing into your current comments. So please go ahead.
Well, actually, the CTA is, remember, we're doing a live election night, November 5th, starting at 6 p.m., not a.m., 6 p.m. with a Gazette, which is huge. And we are going to have sponsor releases. We're going to have guest releases. We'll be announcing those in the coming days. And that was the plug I was going to go with this time.
Sorry. I didn't mean to ruin it for you. So the most exciting thing on election night is going to be coverage of We Have Issues with Mark and Kyle.
Yep. Yeah. It's going to be great. It's going to be very entertaining, a lot better than, great experience for all our listeners and viewers to tune in and watch us. It'll be entertaining. It'll be easy access. Like I mentioned, Kyle likes that, and we'll have a lot of fun and hopefully entertain everybody there and inform them and keep them up to date live on what's happening on election night. So I don't know. I have 4 kids. I have one boy on the way. We found out yesterday.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I'm selfish. I'm worried about my kids, between the fees and the taxes and just I'm against regulation and some of the things that are coming out of Denver are concerning. So, I see no light at the end of the tunnel. I'm naturally optimistic, thanks to the Republican Party and those that are currently in power, thanks to a judge last week. I don't see anything, like Mark said, changing anytime soon. And that's a concern. I see us losing more seats in El Paso because of the chaos of the Republican Party and how we've gotten fat and lazy. I said that when I was chair. There was too many candidates that just didn't campaign because they technically didn't have to. But, that doesn't help the ticket. And so we have a place where we're losing drastic margin. Democrats are pushing more things down the pipe that we just don't need, and property taxes are going up, the housing prices, we have a major problem there. I see a lot of things that we need to address now that I don't see getting addressed for any, years. And so I'm concerned about my kids and their future.
I will say this in fairness, Jeff Crank's going to be our congressman from the 5th Congressional District here in El Paso County. And I do think that he is working hard to
Yes.
stem that tide and turn the
Yep.
tide around and take an active party leadership, not just in El
Ownership,
Paso
yeah.
County, but in the state of Colorado.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be, I mean, literally gets elected to office, kind of the ranking Republican in the entire state
Yeah.
of Colorado, save Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, they're going to be on the top of the cake together.
Yeah.
So-
But hey, I'll tell you what, Josh kind of brought us down, but you know what I'm looking forward to on election night?
What?
Wearing our sweet ass merch.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that is going to be freaking awesome. I cannot wait to don this shirt with Kyle's beautiful face on it.
And if anybody would like one in the meantime, please let us know.
Yeah, drop us a comment, and after you subscribe on YouTube, drop us a comment that you want a shirt, and we'll make it happen.
Those
And maybe
look
what
great.
we could do, best question or comment on election night that we get live stream, free merch coming your way.
Yep.
Exactly. Perfect.
And
Perfect.
if you butter me up, listeners and viewers, I'll be monitoring the comments so I
Yeah.
can filter the good ones out from the bad. So, just tag, just mention, hey, Josh, pull me up top and I got you. So,
Or whoever submits the best Marine joke, Mark and I may pick one of those and just
Yeah.
give them the shirt too. So
Yeah, best Marine joke, definitely.
okay, so what's the issue this week, Mark?
Boy, this is one that really means something to me. And I got to tell you, I've been spending a lot of time sitting in Denver traffic, driving up, sporting events, whatever, going to Denver. It seems like traffic's just getting worse and worse and worse in the state of Colorado. But the thing I have not been able to get used to, and it scares the shit out of me every time that it happens, it's guys on the fucking motorcycles that drive by at 100 miles an hour between lanes. I don't know whose idea it was, who says that this is actually safer in Colorado for these guys to drive between lanes, but it's the law of the land. But what I have seen, and I'm a motorcycle rider myself, and I got to tell you, the proposition of frickin' flying between a bunch of cars that are going 5 miles an hour scares the shit out of me, and something I probably wouldn't do. And when I see these numbnuts on crotch rockets doing like wheelies as they're going between traffic, I think, oh my God. Yeah, this is just an accident waiting to happen. And to push it further, I see this guy on a freaking giant Goldwing or Harley or whatever it is. He can't fit between the traffic lanes because he's basically riding on a car on 2 wheels. So what does he do? Drives in the on the shoulder. That's still illegal. But what the hell? I'm on a motorcycle. I can apparently do whatever I want in the state of Colorado. So I gotta tell you, man, I don't know.
How many people do you think
I'm sure there are studies
first
out there
before there changes? Because it did pass. You saw them on the big billboards on the highway, I-25, that it's legal for if traffic is stopped for motorcycles to split the cars. But if they're moving, it is not. And I've seen an uptick of motorcycles splitting moving traffic. And it just takes one. I mean, I used to have a motorcycle, rode all the
one
time.
switch lane.
I never went through and split traffic, even if where I was riding was legal, because one moron just rubs my handlebar and I'm chop suey. And you see idiots going by, and I'm not gonna lie, I ride a little closer to the right on the white line, because I'm going the speed limit so I don't piss off Kyle, and being in the left lane going under. But I mean, it's like, this is dangerous. And there's been an uptick on motorcycle accidents, specifically crotch rockets, and this isn't going to help.
You know why I'm not worried about this issue?
Oh, here we go.
Because I believe in Darwin's theory of natural selection. These idiots are going to take care of themselves. So,
Here's what I don't want to have happen. I don't want Darwin to take my mirror in the process.
What people need to do is install larger mirrors. I mean,
Yeah.
I have the same problem with the cyclists that you see randomly on our numerous bike lanes taking up more space than a semi, and they put them all these bike paths everywhere, and the cyclists are still pricks. They're riding four deep, and then they look at you like you're doing something wrong. And the motorcyclists, in a lot of them are military. I'm shout out to the Army. A lot of them have those overcompensating crotch rockets and Camaros and stuff like that. So these guys are splitting traffic, moving traffic, and they have the camis on and everything, and it's just like I've had too many guys that I serve with get into motorcycle accidents for being stupid like that. So
wait till they start using the bike lanes too. It's not just splitting traffic, motorcycles in the bike lanes going 80 miles an hour.
I see a pattern here with issues on Colorado's highways and interstates.
I was going to say, if only we had a governor, somebody that would be willing to veto, some of these stupid ass transportation laws we have in the state of Colorado, or enforce them.
Yeah.
Well, he's too busy planning his presidential run, so he doesn't care about Colorado anymore.
Now I will say this about the race and our current governor. Here's a really interesting thought. If Kamala Harris ends up winning this race, he's really angling for a cabinet position right now.
Yeah.
Raise that national profile. That means we end up with Diana Primavera as the governor of the state of Colorado.
Hey, wait. Here, hold on. This is Primavera at the podium talking about Colorado. I love you. And
which Diane's a lovely woman. I've known her for a lot of years. I served with her in the state house. But holy mackerel, I'll just say that.
I don't feel so bad about my three-toed joke now that you just did.
I'm here for you guys.
Well, I don't mean to be, critical. I be making the same comment if it was, somebody else from the backbench in the state legislature, right? But wow.
Well, I mean, we have plenty of issues, not just we have issues here on the podcast, but which everyone's liked and subscribed already on YouTube. But the fact that
nice.
You look on the social media of the governor and it looks like some 80-year-old white guy on Pinterest. It's just it's scenery pictures and look how beautiful. And it's like there's some major things happening in Colorado that need to be addressed, and it's just silence. And I don't understand. It's just like this isn't time to put pictures up of Pikes Peak and butterflies and endangered frogs. There's things that need to be addressed in Colorado, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon the way things are going.
Maybe.
We're gonna save lynx and bobcats along with frogs now.
Yeah, and maybe somewhere down the line there's a candidate we can all get behind.
If only.
If only.
I still think that we're having one of the things that just gets up my crawl is the wolf issue. And I know they're here, but they keep on getting killed, and we knew that was going to happen. And they keep on going, and I'm just waiting for one of them to eat Fluffy from some person in Boulder who decided it's beautiful on the scenery and not the reality of bobcats and mountain lions and wolves roaming closer to Boulder and Denver are starting to eat Fluffy, and it just pisses me off.
Hey, man, I live up kind of close to the mountains, and I do a little extra protection on my 5 acres with my dog. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be about a decade before the wolves get far enough south to impact Boulder.
Well, there's a rumor, and this is just a rumor, ranchers have been defending the wolves, their herds from the wolves, and which obviously the wolves pay the ultimate price. But I mean, maybe you need to start live trapping them and relocating them. I don't know. I'm just saying. speed up the process.
Hey,
So
you
The
know,
Wolf
we've gone an hour.
relocation program.
You know, we've got an hour and 8 minutes, and our producer usually yells at us for going over an hour.
Yep.
Except for when
well, I'm
he's
on
on the
camera,
show and
so
wants to talk a
I'm here
lot.
all night.
Well,
No.
so again, this is Kyle Blakely and Mark Waller with our producer Josh Hosler this week, and another episode of We Have Issues. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that you should subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and make plans to watch us on election night for our special live episode in partnership with the Gazette.
We're going to cover it all.
Have a good week.